When Mjolnir comes crashing through Jane Foster's apartment, she begins to fear the worst. Both Asgard's greatest enemies working together to mount an all-out assault on the Golden Realm. Will Jane use the power of Thor to save Asgard? Will she become the Mighty Thor? Jane Foster and the Mighty Thor, issue number 1, tells a story about Asgard getting attacked by the remnants of Malekith's Dark Elf forces. And while Thor Odinson is currently busy dealing with whatever's happening in the Banner of War crossover story over in the main Thor book, the only person who's worthy enough to protect Asgard in the meantime is Jane Foster. Shut up, Bill. From start to finish, Torn Grönbeck's story is pretty straightforward. And I don't want to make it sound like that's a bad thing, because it's not. I honestly think that that's probably the best way to do it. And this is where I'm going to get a little personal, so hold on to your butts. Jason Aaron's Thor series, his God Butcher stuff, making Jane Foster Thor, it's the reason why I got back in the comics. And so because of that, I'm probably going to judge this book harder simply because his Thor work has a special place in my heart. My tiny goblin heart. Now check it. When you look back on Aaron's Thor epic, yes, I'm going to call it that, there's a couple of things about it. One, he told an amazing Jane Foster story, like a really good story. And by him mapping out everything, Thor losing his worthiness to making Jane Thor, Odin's disdain towards Jane, and the War of the Realms, the conclusion of all that was so worth it. And if I can make a comparison, Aaron's work on Thor was just as epic as the MCU's Infinity Saga, phases 1 through 3. Now obviously Tony Stark was phenomenal, and his death hit everyone. Now the thing about that is that if the MCU ever brought Tony back to life, which I do not think they will, but let's just say for whatever sake they do it, that will definitely cheapen everything phases 1 through 3 set up. But if Tony never died in the Endgame, then none of us would complain that he's still flying around as Iron Man. The problem is, Tony's dead. That did happen. Same thing with Jane Foster's time as Thor. The way everything concluded, that happened. And after Aaron's work, Thor Odinson returned as the main Thor, while Jane became a Valkyrie. Jane's ending in sacrifice and giving up the power was so fucking good that this 5-issue story, it doesn't cheapen it, but it doesn't seem to carry that same pizzazz that Aaron did on the character. Obviously, looking at it long term, I don't think Jane should have stopped being Thor. I mean, if we can have 2 Spider-Men, then why can't we have 2 Thors? But how do you make Jane Thor again after that amazing conclusion? Well, I personally don't think that you actually can, without you just doing it as a writer. And that's what this issue does, sort of. I mean, Jane is still Valkyrie, yet she isn't willing to use the hammer's full potential. And so because of that, her story right now feels like it's beating around the bush. So my only hope is that the story has an actual objective when it comes to Jane's character and when it comes to Jane's Thor. When it comes to the art, there's nothing crazy or amazing about it. Michael Dowling does a great job. My only issue is that, the art, I feel like we've seen it before, except better. But again, the art's fine. It's just not doing anything amazing, at least for me. Overall, the writing and the artwork, it's great and it's serviceable. Me personally, I think Marvel just needs to set up Jane to be Thor again. And I hope this series will do that, but it does seem that this mini is more of a reaction because of Thor Love and Thunder coming out. Overall, if you read this book, it's fine. Nothing offensive happens, but perhaps if you're a stickler when it comes to Aaron's Thor, then maybe you might want to wait till this mini is done with. But overall, it's fine and it's fun. Jane Foster and the Mighty Thor, issue number 1 gets a 7.5 out of 10. Our story starts things off with a dark elf known as Algrim the Strong, or if you're a Walt Simonson fan, or if you're one of those rare fans of Thor the Dark World, it's Curse, Malekith's second in command. And somewhere within the 9 realms, Niflheim to be exact, the dark elf was talking with an unknown character. Now she might be a light elf or something of that sort, but the important thing to know is that whoever this is will be our mystery character who's playing behind the scenes and is pulling everyone's string. Now it's during their conversation that the woman assures Curse that the faction of dark elves who have remained loyal to him are willing to follow him into battle and are willing to go to war against the Golden Realm, against the realm of Asgard. But Curse isn't the only villain being visited by this mysterious character. Villains from across the 9 realms like Hela, Ulik the Troll, and Thrai Odinson are all being met by this character. And she's making the rounds and trying to recruit Thor's villains into waging another full-scale war against Asgard, because for some reason, she wants the gods to fail, the gods to fall. A week later, we pick up with Jane Foster's Valkyrie, who is shown to be standing alongside Ross Solomon, a character from the Jason Aaron Thor era, who was once an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and is now an agent of Wakanda. Basically, these two are here to keep a lookout for someone who's considered a threat, something of a machine-like quality that is apparently going to be making its way through the park. And while both Captain America and Iron Man are on standby mode, preparing for Jane to give the word, the scene is basically an update for those who haven't been paying attention ever since Jane Foster stopped being Thor. Obviously, we know that she's Valkyrie, and besides her super strength and super endurance, we get to see how her powers work up close. Because like all Valkyries, Jane can perceive and sense the coming of death for every living individual. And this comes to light via a death sign that appears above everyone's head. It's like a purple clouded skull, and within each skull is every respected person's life story, and how their eventual death will occur. However, since the threat she's looking for isn't human, what Jane has to do is look for someone who doesn't have that purple skull. And fortunately, she eventually is able to find a target. And so once the heroes confront the supposed human, who quickly reveals himself to be an evil machine, the heroes are able to easily destroy it. And it's after this moment where one of the bystanders drops dead because of a heart attack. Yet it's here where we get to see Jane communicate with this person's spirit before the spirit reaches the realm of the dead. So yeah, overall, we are getting a sense of how Jane Foster's Valkyrie works. She can sense who's going to die, and she can talk to the dead. Oh, and she can ride a Pegasus, which is pretty cool. Now, after picking up a little bit with Runa's character, the Tessa Thompson stand-in character, who's having a date at a local diner, we pick back up with Jane Foster and her loyal steed inside of her apartment. But amid their conversation, Sif, who's currently watching over the Rainbow Bridge, summons the Master of War. While at the same time, back in Jane's apartment, Jane hears the sound of flying metal, and boom, Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor, crashes through Jane's window. Now, Jane doesn't know what to make of the situation, given the fact that 1, the hammer is covered in blood, and 2, the last time she wielded the hammer, Thor wasn't in a good spot. And so obviously, given the abrupt situation, Jane calls out to Sif in order to find out on what the heck is going on. Now up in Asgard, we have Lady Sif being confronted by the Master of War, aka Beta Ray Bill. But once Bill shows up, Sif tells the Horseman to prepare the armies of Asgard and to sound off the horns of war, while simultaneously, she's having a conversation with Jane, informing her that Asgard is under attack, for their enemies have mobilized, and with Thor currently absent for whatever reason, we desperately require your help. Now, once Jane uses her powers to make sure Thor's alive, and he isn't dead, Sif tells her to find him and to bring him back. And so from there, Jane tells her horse to fly off and to get Runa and to go to Asgard, because war is coming. Now, while Asgard is preparing to evacuate the city streets, and the armies are preparing the defenses, Sif informs Bill that the Dark Elves are being led by Algrim the Strong, and apparently Curse is no longer imprisoned on Niflheim, which is very surprising to them. And to make things worse, they're not the only ones attacking, because Ulik the Troll, who was supposed to be imprisoned within Asgard's dungeon, has apparently broken free, and his army of trolls are now wreaking havoc within Asgard's cellars. So yeah, basically things are pretty dire. And with that, Algrim orders the elves to fire off the gravitational drop bombs, which upon impact, their energy turns inward, creating a gravitational pull. In essence, they're black holes, which is pretty bad. Then once Jane's Pegasus picks up Runa from her date in order to come to Asgard's defense, we switch back over to Jane's apartment, where she's about to reach down and grab Thor's hammer, for Jane is about to utilize the power of Thor once more. However, she doesn't, because seemingly Jane is afraid to become a god again. She's afraid that she'll lose herself to the power, thus she resists. But suddenly the hammer begins to talk to her, asking if she thinks of herself as being selfishness. Now remember, this isn't just some random voice that's talking to her. This is Odin. Odin's soul, since the God of Hammer story arc, has been absorbed by the hammer. And so not only will Jane have trouble with not wanting to use the power of Thor, but she now has in her possession a hammer with a talking Odin inside. The one person across the 9 realms who doesn't really like her, and kind of hates the fact that she was able to become Thor in the first place. Basically, Odin is not Jane Foster's biggest fan. Elsewhere, we pick up with our mystery character, and it turns out that this person has been working alongside the Enchantress. Now, apparently Enchantress is helping out whoever this is with regards to recruiting the various factions, But it's here where she reminds the woman that the reason your plan is working because they all think that they can fool you. They all think that they could win. And though I'm playing my part, I feel like I have to warn you because, you cannot fool me. I will finish the job. I will free the traitor and the sisterhood and seal the father of the realm eternal. But when the dust settles and you have won your victory, don't ever think of betraying me. Because in the end, I will have my reward, whether you like it or not. And it's with that where the comic ends, where Thor Odinson is trapped as he's about to be attacked by a giant serpent. And that, folks, was the end of Jane Foster and the Mighty Thor, issue number 1. And thank you guys for checking out my video, as it truly means the world to me. And as always, I'm your majestic sayer of words, SuperCliff. And if you guys are new to the channel, then do me a solid by smashing that like and subscribe button. And also hit the notification bell so that you'll never miss out on an upload. And so that you'll always be kept up to date with your favorite top tier comics happening in the comic book world. Now tell me, what are your thoughts on this issue? Are you guys excited for issue number 2? And also, my goal, at least for this year, is to reach 1,000 subscribers. So I'm pretty close. So if you guys can subscribe, that'd be really badass. And I would love every single one of you. Thank you. So yeah, let me know down in the comment section below. And yeah, until the next video, peace.